fine. He's not a nice person.
He drinks.
Smile, guys. No, we're really glad he didn't come. Because honestly,
They don't know how to do selfies. Horrible human being.
Horrible. But when he comes in, round of applause for him.
We'll talk nice to him when he comes in. But until then, he actually
like-
smells bad. Yeah. An unpleasant odor that comes off of Mark Asquith.
Is it the fish? I think it's the fish guy.
I don't know what it is. Something.
So someone, well, normally he would spend, we have an hour, right?
Uh-oh.
So there are obviously
I thought-
questions. I'm sure they have questions, but...
Oh, I've got a question. Where do you guys get there? Those
ideas?
Crazy. No. Let me finish my question. Don't just jump in.
My apologies.
I have to separate you two again, do I?
Where do you get those ideas? Okay, no, that was you. That was right. You're on the right track.
So, I see some very young people in the room who are wondering who we are.
Someone under 30? Is this what you're saying?
Yeah. So somebody should quickly do well, we were a comedy.
Who the hell doesn't know who we are?
Shut up. Somebody
I
explain.
think they know who we are.
I think they know who we are.
We are the new Progressive Conservative Party. And we intend to elect Mr. Canoehead, the next Prime Minister of Canada. Because Mr. Punthead isn't available and they just made fun of his name.
Yeah.
So, shall we?
This is way funnier than I thought. I should be recording this.
Please.
So, yes, shall we?
So let's throw it open to some questions. Yes,
Okay.
there's an exciting question.
Puppets that kill.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
question.
Where are the puppets that kill?
Yeah, where's Rocco?
Yeah, there would probably be a movie made of that. Puppets That Kill, with the brainstorm of John Pattison, and if you go to John Pattison's house, and I don't recommend you do this, all of the puppets are in his living room, and it's just creepy. They're just sitting on chairs, and he's actually the ventriloquist dummy. He has 2 of those, and those are actually from the 1930s. They were made in Germany. And they're just as disturbing as you think they'd be.
They got out just before Hitler
Yeah.
came to power, so they came here.
So, does the sign outside the door say puppets who kill? Or does it say the Frantics? Sorry,
I'm sure there are some people out there that have a question for Buck Staghorn.
Yeah, exactly. All right, yes.
No? What?
Sorry, huge fan since I was a little kid. I'm wondering, do you guys remember the skit, Go to the U.S. Hotel Room? They're offering
maybe not by that name.
Go to the U.S.
I think that wasn't the skit. I think that was the note I left on the waitress's table.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, it's an old Frantic skit for Frantic Times.
Go to the U.S.
Describe
hotel.
the premise.
U.S. hotel, and they're offering, instead of free TV, they're offering something else.
Oh, the hotel free
Oh,
prostitute.
yes, Hotel for There you go.
One of my favorites growing up.
We tried to do that on stage, and the audience was totally grossed out by it. Or was it? Did we do it on stage?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and they thought it was well, you're dealing with that objectification. Actually, if you listen, we've been doing the podcast now. I hope you're all listening to the podcast. You can Google, lovely, Google the Frantics podcast, and there's 30 episodes up. So check them
They're
out.
all free.
They're all free. And
But 31 will
there
be
is a mug up
$200.
there is a mug up here with nothing in it if you'd like to leave us some podcast money. But it was interesting going through the old archive of the old stuff, and we were it was difficult for women at that time. It seemed even we put them in the kitchen a lot and played it that way. So a lot of things got thrown out.
How many people have been listening to the podcasts? Yeah, so for those of you who are Frantic fans and you want to hear some of the old shows, go to thefrantics.podbean.com, and we've got 30 shows up there. Best of Frantic Times. It's actually really good. It's fantastic. It's been fun
And
going
Frantic
through it.
Times, for people who don't know, was the radio series on CBC before Four on the Floor. So people are familiar with the TV show and have no idea there's a radio show, and vice versa. Even I was unaware, yes? Oh, thank you. Okay, translated. Another question. There was somebody else over here who had a question, or they answered it themselves in their head. There we go. Yes.
What was your relationship between you and the censors at CBC back in the day?
Usually bent over. Rear style.
We got censored a few times. We actually had one thing where they got very upset with us after it aired on the radio. Which was...
The song.
If you drink, don't pee?
No.
Yeah, that was it. Where it was, if the... that there was... I wasn't testing men and women. And
Yeah, the premise was, who can resist being drunk better? And the test was urinating into a toilet and who made the least mess. and a man was given copious amounts of alcohol, a woman was given copious amounts of alcohol, the guy made a mess of the washroom and the woman did not, for obvious reasons, and that was proof, scientific proof that women can handle their alcohol better, and we were told, never do that sketch again.
And then there was also the When You Die It's Gross Right.
Yeah, so this was a song that about a child's view of death. And a member of Parliament who in his 7 or 8 years in Parliament, backbencher and had never spoken, found an issue that he thought he could defend, which is children killing themselves is bad. And so he got up and he read this into the Hansard, and
Roger Abbott of Air Farce was so pissed because all those years they'd never made the Hansard, and we made it in 3 years. So that was one for us.
And so
Thank you.
it caused this much of a controversy. We foolishly were like, what do we do about this? Rather than, oh man, we got, the Bare Naked Ladies did a way better job when they were banned from Toronto, right? They did very cleverly, took it all on and confronted it. Anyway, a few people, experts said, no, this is not what it's encouraging and not what it's going to do.
The idea entirely was about a child's view of death as being really cool because you rot. And it's like they just thought it was really cool. And I thought it was like in keeping with like Tom Sawyer when he goes back to look at his own funeral. I think the fascination with death is something that's different.
They went so far as to ask people who had attempted suicide to listen to the song to see how they reacted to it. Luckily, they didn't finish the job.
Yeah.
But their reaction was, no, this makes me laugh, and whenever I feel good, I don't feel suicidal. So that was the turning point. It was really quite an interesting...
We had a few sketches that could easily push someone over the edge.
Now on television they took a few sketches from us. One was a song called Nazi Paraphernalia, which was a very clever song because Paul swaggers around town dressed as punk with lots of Nazi symbolism on him and pushes people around, but at the end of the song, a little old lady gets up from a park bench and wallops him with her purse. But that still wasn't good enough for them, so they said, not that one. So they yanked that one. The other one they took down was my Carol Pope impersonation of the song Yugoslavia.
Why?
Because Mila Mulrooney came from
Yugoslavian stuff.
from Yugoslavia, and they thought that we were making fun of Mila's country of origin, so the CBC pulled the plug on that one.
And then also the space capsule one.
Right, oh, that was after NASA blew up.
Yeah, which one was that? Which was the...
Zero G or Me, that one, yeah.
Yes, the moon, that I've seen the moon. I have touched the moon. It was pretty weird. It was with Jenny King, and we were in a satellite. To be honest, I never got the premise of that, but I just wanted FaceTime on the TV show, so I took it. I have no idea what it is.
Any other questions?
Well, the other thing though about the suicide is I were doing a gig in Brandon, Manitoba, and at the end of the show, this guy hung around a long time, finally came up at the very end as we were sort of packing and said, I just want to tell you that you saved my life. And I was taken aback and said, tell me more, because I wasn't going to guess what the next part was. And he said he had been, he was an awkward guy, and as I was that age, and he was alone in his dorm room, and his stuff had gone badly, and he was really struggling, and he was thinking about taking his life. And he turned on the radio, and there was the Frantics, and the skit was called Lonely Guy in a Room. And it was just this phone ringing, hello, lonely guy in a room, waiting for someone to call and bring life, joy into a sad and miserable life. No, you have the wrong number. And it just went on and on and on. And people calling for pizzas and so on. And he said, he realized, he said, that was me. I was the lonely guy in the room, and I started laughing, and I ran into him probably 15 years later on Yonge Street, and it was amazing transformation. So, yeah, I like that.
It was
idea.
Stephen Harper.
Yeah, I've never forgiven myself. What's that?
That was me.
It
Oh,
was?
really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Hello.
Wow.
We should meet every 25 years like this.
There was a question back there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can follow that.
No.
So I thought I heard that you guys, or at least some of you, came up from that classic Toronto improv background and you were trained by Delphos and did the Second City style of improv. First of all, is that true? And if so, do you still do the improv rudiments and improvise to write your sketches and do the short form games and things like that?
I think only two of us attended Second City, you and me, right, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These two guys did? Yeah. We never used improv to write sketches, except they just actually, come to think of it,
Bala came out of that.
Piece of Pie came out of that too. We did that, yes. We did that as yeah, we did it on a set at Smale's Pace, at Change of Pace in London, Ontario. And it became...
Oh, they can stay.
He's going to do a Donald Trump impersonation.
It's like playing Brantford. Sorry.
Was it Paul? Was it Paul? He's a scary bad man.
I do that.
Sorry, we're
So yeah, not a lot of improv. One thing we did do though, we had this little camera back when, like, the first mini cameras came out. It was about, this big, and it was called a beta movie, right? And we went out in the neighborhood where we had an office outside of Parliament and Carlton, and we would just come up with visual gags, and a couple of them actually made it into the TV show. One of them was that He's Coming, the one where Dan is...
No, yeah.
Right,
That
we come
come
running
out?
in, yeah, and that came out of us horsing around. And I remember us doing stuff there. There was one where Paul stood in a garbage can, and Peter came along and was sort of sorting through the garbage and saw Paul and took his belt and moved on, moved on the left. And as we're doing this, a couple of people were inhaling glue from a bag.
Before the days of crack.
Yeah.
Remember glue?
Yeah. You had to squeeze the tube, and if you had left over, you could build a little model airplane.
Yeah,
And,
you guys have fentanyl now. We had glue.
and even had warnings on it, so it wasn't really... Anyway, and the
You
two of
can
them are
build
standing
stuff
there,
with
and
glue.
they're
You
yelling
can't
at
build
us.
anything with fentanyl. Sorry, Ricky.
So yeah, they're yelling at us for being idiots.
Well, I think we did a little bit more improv at the very beginning, but when we got the radio show gig and we had to crank out hundreds and hundreds of sketches, I think it drove it completely out of us. And then we didn't really do much in the way of improv after that, but even Mr. Friendly, I think, had a huge amount of improv componentry in that too. I mean, we did improv.
But it was written more than anything.
Yeah, yes, it's written first.
I'm doing some improv. I was never a fan of it, but I'm finding if I choose the right group of people, we tend to put on a pretty good show, so I still enjoy doing it. I have to credit Second City for, had I not gone there, I wouldn't have met these guys. I was in a workshop every Saturday mornings, 2 hours, $7, John Candy.
Oh, so I had
That
Sheldon.
was
I was unfortunate to have Sheldon, the drunk
there you go.
dickhead, Patenka.
So there was a girl in the workshop, Karen Dickey, who asked me to come and see her do some improv at a club that she wasn't very happy with. I went, the two of us started doing a two-hander improv, and a few weeks later, Rick and Paul show up as Green and Chato. And they do a two-hander, but it's really funny and well rehearsed. And then about 3 weeks later, now we're all working there, and 3 weeks after that or so, they come in quite excited because Poopy Dan and his lunch is in town. And I have to ask, what's a Poopy Dan? And they said it's Dan Redican and he has puppets. And that was that's where we met. And as soon as the four of us were in a room together, it was, I have a line for you, I wrote a sketch for you, I have an idea for you, you know what you should start doing, you know what you should stop doing, you know what, let's do. And immediately there was this thing. and it pissed off 2 other performers who quit, and and we took over the place. So one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So here we are today.
Yeah, there was a mutual admiration society, and then what I liked was, we toured all these really odd locations. So we were doing like the Holiday Inn bars, and in Owen Sound, I think it was, they actually they had a Volkswagen on the dance floor, and for 50 cents you got to smash it 3 times with a sledgehammer. I think the glass had been removed, right? And then, yeah, it must have been. And then,
well, it was the first to go.
Yeah, and then when it was our turn, they had a band playing, and then when it was time for us, they moved the Volkswagen out of the way, set up 4 microphones, and we were off to the races.
Of course, it was a good German car, so you couldn't dent it.
No, exactly. So it was the weirdest gigs, because we were in the middle of these, like one band called Wave, who did all this Pink Floyd music and stuff, and then we get up and do comedy. It was a really weird thing, and people were hostile at start, sometimes, this is you fucking maggots, and so on, and that was Dan backstage.
But he warmed up after a few weeks.
Yeah, and he's relaxed, they were really educational, and I think that's where we developed. We got to be fast, we got to be funny, we got to be visual, we got to very quickly to hold it. Well, first to get an audience. And that was really an amazing process of figuring out ways to grab people.
We were also really filthy. We had 10 filthy minutes, and we kept people on our side, and then we could do other stuff that we wanted to do more, but it was just, these are dirty jokes. I like these are dirty jokes. People understand dirty jokes.
Yeah. And we were never really a dirty joke group.
No, I always had to have them explain.
But no,
that's not true. We were always rude.
Oh yeah.
To each other. And
but on stage you couldn't, like on radio, there were limits, so then...
Oh, on radio, yes, no, but on stage.
All the people who helped us set up our gigs, like Rob Bartlett and who's that other guy who works at the, whatever, that thing? Whatever.
The guy?
Oh, that guy, yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Walworth. Chris Walworth, yeah. So we were always very abusive to our help.
Yes.
That was fun. Like this fucking Rob Bartlett guy.
There's kids here.
Yeah. Boy, we would be making fun of him all the time.
Not me, I'm always nice to him. I don't like your attitude.
All in favor of Paul leaving the room?
Okay.
I got a few.
Means I can go home sooner.
That's right. That was my son. Anyone else?
Who else here is Paul's son? Anyone? A few.
Yes, sir.
You said that the pie was improv?
It was the Second City style improv. We had the idea for the sketch, and we didn't have a script. So the first time, as I recall it, the first time we did it, we just improvised it. Then we wrote it down later, but there was nothing written down.
Didn't it start as a silly title?
It could be just the title. It could have. We just had. We used to write titles for sketches that didn't exist, and we would start our days. To get myself started, if I had a bunch of stuff to write, because we were cranking stuff out, I would write a list of titles. And I think Mr. Canoehead for me was one of the titles.
It was. Mr. Canoehead saves the day.
Yes. Which I actually wrote out as a sketch that was nothing like what Mr. Canoehead ended up being.
He was Ward Cleaver.
It was Ward Cleaver from the Leave It to Beaver show.
Yeah.
For some reason he gets a canoe stuck to his head, but it had nothing to do with the show. Anyway, yeah. But that one, I think the first time we performed it, there was no script. It was the idea, and we didn't have. I don't think we didn't have a punchline for forever. We did that. We did that on stage a number of times, and the punchlines died and died and died. And we said, "Oh, it's a really good sketch." And then we said, "Well, what was the last time in the sketch that we got a laugh?" And so we took that and made that the punchline.
And that changed from "So can my mother" or "So can McDonald's," depending on where.
No, the record company wouldn't let us say "So can McDonald's."
So
that's why the album says
"So can your mother."
And the first album we did actually has some of those fake titles on it. I brought about 8 or 9 copies to sell it.
Oh yes.
And on the back. So we had, it has the skits that are on there, Heaven for Presbyterian and Mrs. Sarnicki's Toilet Paper and all the titles, the actual titles of the skit. And then at the times, and then it just starts, it goes. So there's 21 tracks, but there's probably 90 or 100 titles, and they just get goofier and weirder, and the times are like 4 hours, 28 minutes, 6 days, half a second, you know.
And I did the artwork for the album, and the CBC came back and said, you better highlight those and indicate that those are fake. I went, it's impossible to have a 36-hour album. No. A lot of people out there are going to be really pissed off if they see 800 titles on there and only 13 of them are working.
The worst thing we did was on the back cover, it says, we have Carolyn Scott was performing with us, and Carolyn is an amazing performer, just an incredible singer and funny and so on. And her credit is, Carolyn Scott is a talented performer who has her own teeth. And I remember when she saw the album cover, she looked at me and just said, thank you. I'm on an album, Mom, look.
Well, her career took off after that. She was doing a lot of dental ads.
That's it.
Any other questions?
Let's start, we'll come over here. Yes.
I have two older brothers, and they're significantly older, so we didn't have a lot of things in common, but we loved Four on the Floor. It's one of the things we used to quote to each other all the time. We still do.
So
one of us, Maddie, had to work today. But was there anything that you're surprised that you get quoted to, or people remember from the show or the radio show?
I was playing Funk Fest down in Chicago about a month ago, which is a musical comedy festival in Chicago. And there was a chap that came up to me and he said, why is there no ticking on the end of Boot to the Head on the album, but there's ticking on the end of the song on the TV show? Excuse me, sorry? When you play the album version, there's ticking at the end of the album version, but there's no ticking on the end of the... Sorry, sir, I can't. So that's we are caught off guard the odd time.
I'm amazed when people remember anything, and people often remember things that I have no memory of. So it's me going, yes. Yes, that was a good one.
Well, and there is the...
Shame
there
about
is
the
that
tattoo
whole,
you got.
Yeah, there's that whole thing though where people will say some, like, you know, as you did there, you give a snippet of a skit and it's, where is that from? And somebody did this was a different thing, but with Prisoners of Gravity, somebody said, I love the episode you did on women and menstrual blood. And I'm like, I don't think we did a whole episode on that. You know, a guy up in space doesn't have a lot of experience, and it turned out it was one line from one of the experts about in a book or something. I don't know, but it is interesting what sticks with people, right? That there are specific things that people quote again and again and again.
Over here? Yes, sir.
Can you talk a bit about your writing process, and did you agree when you brought sketches to the table? Did everybody agree? And what was that whole process like?
Our writing process was a little unusual because I worked with the kids in the hall. I was working with them as the head writer, really, and they would fight everything through. They would go and fight things through, and this is mine, we're going to do it. No, that's stupid, I don't want to do that. They'd fight, get the pieces in. We did the opposite. We would bring pieces in, we'd read them to each other, and we'd laugh, we'd enjoy them, and then someone would say, you know, I feel like rewriting that one, and we would swap them around. And people would rewrite each other's piece. So it was not about ownership, and it was not about ego. It was about the piece growing. Now, sometimes a piece grew in a direction that you didn't want it to. And if it grew in that way and it didn't work at the next read-through, you had an opportunity after that to take it and rewrite it to a way that brought it back to closer to what you wanted, which happened sometimes. And sometimes it became something very different from what you first imagined. And sometimes it was for the better. Normally, it was for the better, but it was a way that all of us could work together. It was very unusual for comedy troupes. There's normally a lot of war that goes on, and we didn't engage in war.
No.
We did a lot of it was just yes ands, a lot of positive talk, and when sometimes something that was horrible, no one would ever say it's horrible. You would just notice that no one at the end said, I want to rewrite that.
Yeah, and they would just sort of sit at the table at the end of the meeting and,
And if you were attached to it, you would ask, it didn't, because you'd hear that there wouldn't be the laughs. I mean, that was ultimately, if we weren't making each other laugh, it wasn't going to go anywhere. And then it was, sometimes it was an interesting inquiry. What is this? What is it? Well, I didn't get where it was going, or this or that, or the funny part was this. And it might spark something else, but yeah, it was the best because everybody just kept adding and adding. Some of the skits went through 16 drafts. And
because Rick would rewrite them, and we had to bring it back to when it was funny.
There was my contribution to this would be the sketch that's on YouTube, Her First Period. We've seen this, heard it, yes? Please check it out. 6 million people really like it. But for me, to get Dan makes his, you do something to get you going, to make yourself feel funny. So often I would write a song, a rude song, or perhaps a rude sketch, something to read to the boys at the beginning of the table read to get me up, to get everything going. So I wrote this one about the man on the GO train talking to his daughter on the phone, thinking, well, I'll read it at the table and then we'll just blue box this sucker. After reading it, Chato's on the floor, and these two are pounding the table with their fists, yelling and screaming. And I'm looking up, and they're saying, well, that goes in the show. And I was absolutely aghast. So don't hold that. And that was never rewritten. That was never touched. That's stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
So don't hold yourself back. Don't overthink it. And my whole motivation is to make these three guys laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a wonderful measure. And it worked really well for us.
And I think we actually had a file called the Vortex file, and you would write stuff knowing it was going to go in the Vortex file, and sometimes it didn't. And Dan would come in with these really amazing rhythmic, poemy kind of things. What was the one? Red, white, or whatever. Remember that?
Oh yes, it was
they didn't make any sense.
People just talking colors, but they end up having an argument somehow, right?
Yeah. Yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, yellow,
green.
Yellow, green, and on page, there were times when we go into the rehearsal, the day of the recording, and David Milligan, our producer, would just, I don't know what this is, but let's see it. And there were, even on the TV show, there was a skit called He's Coming, and it was just shot down Allen Gardens, and Paul comes running in, he's coming, he runs out, and the two of us come in these kind of weird black Beatle outfits almost, and then three of us, he's coming, in gibberish. And the script says they speak gibberish, and then finally, in comes Dan, the suitcase, striding, and the three of us circling him like bees. And Dan says, now, a word from our sponsor.
Well, we had to fight, we had to push to get those on the show. So the producers were far too, I don't get this, so we're not doing it. But what? So there was a bit of that in the show. Now, mind you, the show turned out good, but we could have been more mental, I think. And we could have pushed back a bit more.
And the cameraman who shot it, Rick McVicker, who passed away just last year, a brilliant guy, and he said, before we shot, he said, I don't get this one, did I miss a page or something? And after we shot it, he said to me, I think that's the funniest thing we've done. It's my favorite thing I've ever seen. It's just nuts. And when you're doing that and taping it, it's not like there's a joke that has a punchline. Like you just, this is going to look funny or not.
I was in LA at one point doing a show. It was a sketch show, a Jenny McCarthy show, and they had really talented performers doing this show and talented writers, and the producer, who was above me, vetoed every sketch, so he had to really understand each sketch. And I was saying, you know, we've got a bunch of really good writers here. Will Forte, Last Man on Earth, was one of our writers, and John Benjamin. We had really good writers working on the show. And I said, no, we have a group of people who are funny, and they have a voice, and we've got to allow that voice to come out to the best of our abilities. And the show never did that. So the show had moments that were quite great, but it was mainly these talented writers fighting, saying, how can we please this man here who was either pleasable or not pleasable? And it never became a good show. and you know, a lot of shows have that problem because they don't have a voice. They don't trust their voice. They don't say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. So we would do some stuff that was just weird, or it was in danger of being lame, or we could go off in all sorts of different directions, particularly more on the radio show and more with live. But we trusted our voice, and that's what you have to do with any troupe.
Well, the first time that we did the television series was in co-production with Showtime, and we got one note from the person from Showtime, and that was, can you remove the word portage from the canoe head sketch? and we went,
Did you want that?
Why? Why did you, what? Because we don't use portage in the United States. We don't understand that word. It's not, well, and what are you talking about? If you go to Minnesota, they're going to use portage. Yeah, but my mother is from Texas, and they don't know the word portage.
They do now.
Yeah.
That was Gary, right? Was that Gary?
Yeah, that was Gary.
And,
Yeah.
Gary something.
and even then, the television show really only happened because the head of CBC came to London and saw us live, and went,
Good questions. Yes. more
Right over
questions.
there.
So speaking of finding your voice, I'm a grade 5 teacher and I work with students with learning disabilities.
Right.
I'm always trying to get them to understand they can find their voice in ways that don't involve reading or writing necessarily.
Sure.
Can you talk about your experiences with school and how that contributed to your career or hindered your career?
My experience with school was I wasn't really much of a student. I felt like school was generally not talking to me. I remember in grade 3 there was a thing where they had said, write a story about a little red robin, and I wrote a story about this little red man who was robbing people. I thought that was pretty funny, and I got a failing grade for not. And so it's like, I thought that was probably more creative than someone probably is going to write about eating a worm, I guess. So for me, school was not important. Even in high school, I did a lot of reading, and I specifically stayed away from the syllabus. So like I wouldn't read the book. I actually went through all of John Steinbeck one year, except The Red Pony, because that was in class. So I would be perverse in that way. I was an enemy of my own education, and I left it behind.
Well, for me, school was grade 6. I was in competition with our teacher, Mr. Hudson, because I was funnier than him, and he did not like it. And so he had a hate on me. And in grade 7, we had to do a writing thing, and I wrote this piece of science fiction because I was a science fiction nut about very quickly. All the world leaders were given a mysterious telegram to assemble at the United Nations on this specific day. They didn't know what was going on. They were mad, but they assembled, and then they sat in the audience, and the curtain parted, and there was a dais of 7 men who said, all the world leaders, there's actually only 7 companies that are running all the businesses in the world. You think there's many businesses, there's only 7. We actually own all the businesses in the world, and we have decided, because you're doing such a terrible job running your countries, that we are not maximizing profits, we're firing all the global leaders. The teacher gave me an F, because it was horrible, it was dystopic, and it was not enough sex in it. And I had, it was not a sad view, it was a cynical view of the future. And our teacher was a very positive person, so I got an F purely because it didn't match her worldview. So I thought it was a pretty good story, but I'll tell you, I did not write a single thing for another 5 years after that. It completely crushed me. So, I mean, there's good and bad in school. No good.
Yeah.
In school,
Just bad.
I think I would guess we were all kind of straight C students unless we were interested, and then we could soar. And so for me, life began the moment school ended. I'd be making 8mm films, doing magic shows, putting on plays, creating, building, painting, you name it, doing stuff. And even at university, when I should have been studying, I was on the campus radio station doing comedy there. So, you know, I don't know if any of us had gotten into a theatrical course, if it would have made a difference or not. But
Another question in the back there.
Just a quick comment. I'm a teacher as well. And today, if you guys give me stories like the ones you described, you got A's all the way. That's what I'd be looking for.
I'm going back to school.
I'm doing grade 7 right this time.
I do need to get my grade school diploma. So, thank you.
Don't forget what you wanted to do before you became a comedian.
Horse trainer?
No, nuclear physicist.
Oh, that's right. I wanted to be a nuclear physicist, but then really I wanted to be a comedic nuclear physicist. And another question.
I wanted to play nuclear physicist in a porn.
The guy in the red nuclear physicist, man.
So there was the piece of pie sketch.
Yes, pie sketch, yes.
And then on Four on the Floor, there was also the sketch where, Paul, you went into a shop and asked for pastry to be smeared all over you. I'm just wondering if the same person wrote that, and if they have some kind of bizarre pastry fetish.
No, I think that was but yes, yeah, Paul's bizarre pastry fetish, yes.
I do Danishes.
What was the pastry shop called?
It was one that was shot for the pilot. It was on that black background.
It came off the radio show.
I can't remember, but I remember on radio she had to make all these sounds of people rolling, or the guy rolling in all.
I tended to do most of the physical comedy in the group, and so I would be just naturally thinking of physical humor, and the idea, it started off with just me going in and saying, what if you guys smeared pastries all over my naked body? And I think someone else actually wrote the sketch.
Oh, yeah, because my thought was, what if we don't?
Ooh, here's a funny idea. Paul goes into a cake shop, buys a cake, and takes it home. Huh?
That's an improvement.
But when I was in university at Ryerson, I did a story called Kitchen Sex, where it was, I cut up Barbie dolls and put them on vegetables and then had them pose in incredibly sexy ways, but then I thought I needed more, and we had a lot of rub joints along Yonge Street at the time. Ellis, close your ears. And so I thought, I asked a lady if she wouldn't mind if she could be naked and I could put fruit on her in strategic areas. And she said, yeah. And I said, how much? And she said, I don't know, $25. Sounds interesting, as long as I can keep the fruit, I'm fine. And so she laid down, and I put pineapple rings here and fruit there. And
pineapples are so expensive. Couldn't you have found a cheaper fruit?
And I took a picture and put that in. So I mean, there's, there you go.
I'm not too sure why you told that story.
It was food.
No, he pulls this one out at Christmas, at bar mitzvahs. Good morning, Paul. How are you? I was doing this photo shoot once, and I needed a naked woman. Yeah, okay.
Yes, another. Go ahead. Yes, you.
Sure.
The reason I brought up the one about the whole skit in the hotel before.
Yes.
I lived overseas in southern China for 10 years.
Wow.
And our bar nights were people from 8 or 12 different countries. And a common thing if people from like Europe would say, they would always say, what's the difference between Canadian and American? You guys are the same anyway. So I said, screw that. I found that I did all the old policy radio shows.
Yes.
Cut that one clip out, put it on my phone. And whenever they say that shit, I just play it on my phone. And that was my example of difference between Canadians and Americans. And to this day, that file is being transferred to every other Canadian that lives there, and they're doing that every time they go to the bar.
I love it. That's great.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, when the show went on the States and the U.S., Four on the Floor went on the show, there was another show called The Czar, which had nudity, and they were picking that up as well. And I said to one of the people at the network there, I guess, or maybe it was our producer, I said, "Aren't they concerned because we don't have nudity? We, it's just 4 guys and they're fully dressed mostly unless they're covered in pastry." And he said, "You have religious humor, and that is so edgy for the U.S. That is so, because there was a lot of, there wasn't a ton, but there were some skits in there, and that was the other thing, was we made fun of religion a lot, and not down there."
No, we can't do that. There's a gentleman with the hat. You had a question?
So I just wanted to say, credit where credit is due. You guys deserve a great thanks for the evolution of recent Canadian comedy.
Thank you.
And before I ask the question, well, actually, I'll get to it. What are you guys doing now? Where have your careers taken you since?
I'm waiting in this room.
Yeah. Paul.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm doing Galaxy Quest impressions. So I'm doing meta humor. Never what? Okay, that's. I am working at Best. No, I am running a web design shop and I have my own vlog. If you want to go to Peter Paul Chato on YouTube, you are all worth 1 cent a view. So please do so. Yeah, so I'm doing my geek thing, and which I'd always done through the Frantics, and I have a website company. Dan.
I'm actually currently writing a novel, and as I've done this before, and I learned nothing from having done it before. Most recently I produced a TV series, wrote and produced with a lot of very talented people, called Sunnyside, and it's still out there. If you on any channel owned by Rogers, so like FX, they play them at all. There's only 13 episodes, but they play them forever because it's free CanCon for 7 years. Because the CanCon rules are so lame that they show that they canceled 2 years ago. They get to keep on going. That was the most recent television thing I've done, other than a bit of performing.
Peter.
Yeah. So Frantics disbanded in '88. And then did the usual, wrote for a few TV shows, did a lot of animation work, did a bit of on-camera work. I did a lot of TV commercials, got to be around 45, and I was dying on the vine because it just happened. So I decided to get a full-time daytime job. So I started writing radio commercials for 102.1 The Edge here in Toronto. And that expanded into a few years later. I am creative director for all radio stations in Ontario East, and we're making TV commercials and radio commercials. So still being creative.
And doing solo stuff.
And still playing music a lot. Well, as much as I can.
Ricky.
So after the Frantics, Pete and I actually did a couple of radio series and a couple of plays and stuff. That was great fun. Did the Red Green Show for many years. Steve called me and said, "Do you want to write?" My wife's going to take a break and we'll build it around the character, and that ran 15 years. And after 8 years, I left to do another series, History Bites, and I came back for the last few years. And at the same time I was doing Red Green, I was also hosting and writing Prisoner's Gravity for 5 years. And then, the brains behind that show, Mark Asquith, is the host this evening, or this afternoon.
He's doing a great job. I mean, we've got a lot of moderators in our time.
He hasn't taken up a lot of time.
No,
I have.
Very generous.
And then my wife and I did a documentary about ADHD in adults with Patrick McKenna getting diagnosed on camera, and we thought that would be a fun one-year project. And 8 years later, we have a website, Totally ADD, and we're just every day, 3 people are writing in to say this changed my life, and so it's a really weird journey.
He didn't mean to do it for more than a year, but he just lost track of time.
And he never did finish it.
So yeah.
15 things in one.
Okay, question, yes, over here.
It's funny you mentioned the word Areas, because that's one of my favorites. I played with it for my 13 and 18-year-old who have no idea who you guys are.
Areas.
And they laughed so hard. So I said, there's more, so much more. But,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if I can crop them, that's great. But I always wondered about this. Why Bala and Port Carla?
Because we We sold our cottage actually early this year after 50 summers. And it was on, yeah, and it was halfway between Gravenhurst and Bala, just off the 169. And so I knew.
And to be fair, we always made fun of Rick's dad.
And
yeah, it really was my fault.
Bill from Bala was Rick's dad.
My dad was.
Sorry, no, may I tell you? So well, this is one Bud story. We got a nice little gig opening for Steve Forgill at Massey Hall. I think it was Steve Forgill. And he was quite good, and so it was quite exciting. There's Massey Hall, and there's us, and everything else. And for some reason, your dad was backstage. Why did Bud show up? Well, he was just happy. Yeah, so Bud shows up, and he's sort of hanging out with us. We're backstage, Massey Hall, Steve Forgill, there's people filing in, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, I go, where's Bud? Where's Bud? Bud, where's Bud? Where's Bud? And Redican comes in and goes, hey Rick, your dad's talking to Steve Forgill. And you go down, and there's the 26-foot sailboat. You know, I take that out on the lake, and I sail around the island that we're on there. Have I showed you a picture of the cottage? Here's the cottage.
I don't remember that. That's
you don't?
great.
Yeah.
No, my dad could talk to anyone about anything, and it was brilliant. So.
Huge boosters on the fans.
Great
showed up everywhere.
It was great. It was at all our gigs.
Yeah, my parents wouldn't show up for any, and
neither did mine.
Bud and Wendy Green came to every show they possibly could, and they were our second parents, and we loved them to death.
And now they're dead. See, that's what happens.
We love them to death. Question, Lord.
Now we're looking for new people to love today.
By the way, that is my preferred way to die.
Yes.
This is actually for Rick. I just wanted to thank you for Prisoners of Gravity. I grew up in a small town. It was my exposure to like science fiction and more beyond what was just in my local library.
It was a great show.
It was. I think the lesson from that, and probably from Red Green and from Frantics as well, is you just do. It was created with such passion by people who loved all the genres, and it's Red Green. You know, that show was never going to be a ratings winner in any city over 1 million people. It just wasn't. But it was. Steve Smith is a god in Minnesota and in North Dakota and in Saskatchewan and so on. It's so. You know, you can't get everyone, and there are people, as you've heard, there were people who heard what we did and went, I don't get it. There were people who, I remember being 15 in Python coming on CBC, and people going, I don't get it.
My dad didn't get smart. I love that show. I loved Get Smart. It was the best.
When the Frantics were on TV the first time, we were just on TV, and sometimes people would come up and compliment me. An old man came up to me and said, I see your show on TV. I said, oh, thank you. He said, it's stupid. And he was right.
Now this lady over here, hiding behind that man.
Yes.
The blonde hair.
Hi, I was just wondering, this is directed to Rick Reed.
Oh.
Have you ever been hurt on Rick Reed?
Yes.
Only his heart.
Only my heart, and a couple of times I got nailed, but never when it was dangerous.
You punch him to shut him up.
There were a few things, I could tell you the stories afterwards, where I was supposed to run and jump over this bench, and they were going to throw this giant boomerang after me. It was a piece of plywood, basically. And I was so worried about that, my toe clipped the thing, and I fell, and didn't quite dislocate my shoulder, but yeah, all this stuff that looked dangerous, no.
I just cringed every time I saw
No, the editor did a great job of putting all of that together to hide it.
It was all 3D. The gentleman with the green shirt.
Yeah, on Four on the Floor, you guys did video game sketches.
Correct.
That was probably one of the first exposures I ever had to getting video games in mainstream.
No.
What was the thought process? Like, why did you guys just so deliver that?
Shadow was enough for those things.
Well, I'm a gamer. I mean, I've been playing video games since the text Zork. Infocom! And so I was playing games on the Commodore 64, and then I learned BASIC, and we all did stuff that we thought was funny, and at the time I didn't realize we were, ahead of the nerd curve. Stuff they're doing on Big Bang Theory we were doing back in '84.
You programmed those
Yes,
video games that were on the show like that way. There was nobody in the art department who could do that.
No, so
It was like a 25-second thing and it'd take days to make.
it would take a long time, and because the 64 had so little memory, when you saw the game play, I actually had to program it in multiple chunks and videotape it and then edit it together so it looked like, because I had way too many sprite counts. And you could only have 8 sprites per...
This is fascinating.
I'm just kidding.
I do remember when...
Damn it, he was getting to the sprite count, and that's when it picks up. Damn
When
it.
Chato brought in his Commodore 64, he actually said, in a braggartly voice, "This has 64K of usable memory."
Oh yes, the computer. Chato's always bringing in computers, and look at this one. You put it, and I think, oh, that's really handy, and everything's on that disk. Yes. How do you start it? Well, you put the disk in here, yes, and then you press A, 52.1, yes, and then the screen comes up and you enter X-Tron, /////. Then you type, no, not yet. Then you go for a document. So week after week, he brings in this technology, machine after machine after machine.
And this was DOS, by the way.
And he brought in a typewriter that you'd so, hello, my name is Peter, and it would come up on the screen, and then you'd hit return, and come up, hello, my name is Peter, would go to the paper, and no, I don't want to do that. And then one day, Redican walks in with a box on the table. What's that? I bought a computer. Chato comes in, oh, you bought a Mac! Oh my God! Dan didn't tell anybody about it, he just went out and got a Mac, which is typical Dan, that's just great. So he pulls it out and goes, Redican, we don't need this. Well, how do you turn it on? He said like this. Okay, that's, what about a piece of paper? What if you need to write? He said you do click, click, click. And then what? Start writing. Can we get these? So we bought 4. Chato took the lead on it. We were one of the first offices in Toronto to have a central hard drive, correct?
Connected with AppleTalk. We were the first commercial AppleTalk
This big?
installation.
20 meg.
20 meg?
20 meg hard drive. It was. Anyways, yeah, so, we were just doing the stuff that we thought was funny and interesting, and that's what made the Frantics great, was we were all... None of these guys stopped me from doing video games even though they weren't nerds. They thought it was funny, and bless them. I mean, that's one of the great things about the group. Another question. In the blue, the teacher in the back there.
I'm really glad to find out that podcasts are available. I remember you guys on the Floor, and I'm really looking forward to sharing podcasts with my son.
You'll like them. They're great.
But is there any way to find Floor?
I coincidentally bumped into the director, and so there's a chance that I've talked to him already once, but I haven't followed up. But there's a chance, there's a rights issue, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's the same reason why Prisoners of Gravity can't be shown. It's the rights for all those comic covers and stuff.
He's waiting, the director's waiting for us to die so they don't have to pay us.
There are some on YouTube, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you don't watch them on YouTube, because we do not condone.
But watch them on YouTube.
Yes, was another question. Yeah, the green.
Have any of you ever had a fan experience where like someone has approached you and said, I love your show, and like, you like our show? Because there's somebody that you, like John Cleese, anybody like that. Somebody who you
Oh, you mean a heavy hitter?
Yeah.
No.
People I respect hate this shit.
Will Wheaton apparently was a big fan. Is. That's nice. Periodic. You text him or something?
Yep. We chat.
Oh, listen to. Yeah, I text Will. Yeah.
I remember.
Sure, Mike Myers is a fan.
Yes. And the kids.
Tom Green.
Dave from Foley from Kids in the Hall, who was hosting the Comedy Awards one year, and started talking and said, this show came on called Four on the Floor, and I said, I watched it and I thought, well, Mike, I'll never have a career unless they get canceled. And we got canceled, and he got a career.
Another question.
Actually, Dave and Kevin used to come to all the live tapings of our radio show.
I didn't know that.
They were down at the art when we did the art college.
Kevin came to all the tapings.
And Will Wheaton, he showed up too at our tapings.
The gentleman here, blue and black.
Big fan of Four on the Floor and the album Boot to the Head, which is the concept of Boot to the Head. It's in a couple of sketches in Taekwon Lee, and on Flora and the
Last
Floor.
Will and Temperament.
And Last Will and
Yeah.
Temperament, plus the song, of course. I'm just curious if you remember where the concept, like where did it start? Did it start with the song? Did it start with one particular sketch? Did you all just enjoy kicking people?
I don't know if the phrase existed. If the phrase existed around the office, we would say it. It was like something that...
Wasn't that something we said as kids?
Yeah, I think it was somebody brought it from their childhood. It was just like, we would just be saying, like, it would just, instead of just saying, douche, you'd say, boosh, boot to the head. I was just sort of thrown around like that, I think.
I remember one of my favorite jokes was, what's black and white and jumps up and down? Two nuns in a boot fight. And I just thought, so I don't know if that is, having said that, triggers up, but do you know who came up with it? It wasn't me.
Last Will and Temperament would be the first sketch where that appeared. Taekwon Lee came afterwards.
I think I wrote Last Will and Temperament. I think. And, but I'm not sure, but it seemed to me that the phrase existed before that.
I think we used to say it in Peterborough a lot.
There you go.
I just wondered from the fact that it's in different sketches, which sketch came first and whether it was it has to be funny.
It became iconic, and we just kept milking the fucker.
Do it.
Paul.
What? No. Sorry. Oh, over there, all the way over there.
All the way over there. So I'm a big fan of your Boot to the Head album, as well as all of your 4 on the Floor TV shows.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hate the other stuff too.
I actually had someone almost crash their car listening to Piece of Pie for the first time ever. And anyway, I love Make Up Dirty Words. Well, what's your favorite skit for you guys?
Well, that's a great question.
For me, it would be Her First Period.
Yeah, that was...
I mean, that's just so much fun to do night after night, and to hear the roar, to hear the laughter, and to imagine what I had never seen what these three guys do except on video. So that it has such a strange, it's such a strange space to be in as a performer. So no, that ranks that.
For me, I would say, I mean, if it's something that I wrote that these guys liked and worked was Senor Steve. Which you have to sort of see it on stage. I don't know if you've ever seen Senor Steve, but it is the most bizarre piece I think we've ever done. It makes no sense, and the audience loves it. It's I don't know. I love Senor Steve.
I like some of the surreal stuff. I like Watering the Lawn.
Oh yeah.
Which is just about people humming as men humming as they water the lawn, and one guy's watering the lawn, everybody drops by to watch him water the lawn. So that was kind of I like the magic.
My favorite dance piece maybe is A Lovely, Lovely Body.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes, there's a great of
Ricky? Of the stuff I've written, I was really pleased with Heaven for Presbyterians because we played it in a lot of small towns, and that was really nice. And Canoe had...
all right, Canoe Head.
Yeah, to write, it was the Mrs. Sarnicki's. You could say anything, you know.
Yeah,
I'm so stunned, it's like I had an anvil drop down me from a French military aircraft. Like you could just, whatever, but to perform, it's Bala. Because there's that moment where I say Basil, they ought to teach a kid Basil, and I just stand there, and now Dan's character has to decide the hell's Basil. And I don't think I've seen that one tape, so I have no idea what Dan's doing. But there are these waves and waves, and some nights it goes on, and I can get this shift and a sigh and a shudder, and then and so I had this sense of what's going on, but I'm just staring off and rocking on my feet, grappling my change, and so on. So I love that because you can feel he's doing all the work. And there's these waves building, and he gets close. Is that what you do? You get close, and then you...
Yeah, I'm making the decision to ask him the question and then backing off the decision. I know he wants me to, and I'm a little curious, but I don't want to ask the question. But I think that's our time. That's an hour now.
We have another 2 minutes, one more question, and then we're going to head upstairs. Orange guy.
Just because I've seen your first,
Please don't
your
call
first
him Orange
period.
Guy. He's
I'm
had to live
Orange
with
Guy.
this his whole life.
Yeah. I don't mind. I've seen your first period twice. Do you guys keep changing how you react when he's doing his, I mean, do you just every night decide, I mean, you're going to do something different?
Yeah, I think there's always experimenting.
Yeah, so feeling the moment.
Beginning of Heaven for Presbyterian, every time I come up, try and have a different emotion. I've got 4 that I draw from.
but we do take on specific characters that we repeat and we don't overlap. I mean, Dan does the least amount. That's his character in my first period. Rick overacts a little bit more, and then I do even more at the end, pulling up my knees and covering my face. But we keep those personas in that sketch, and that I think makes it funnier. Anyways,
in my mind on that sketch, by the end, I'm being ratcheted up a roller coaster that I don't want to be on. So I'm just going up and up the roller coaster, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I really don't want to be on the roller coaster, and then I go down. Like it's just that's what I'm playing.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.